Hi, it's me, and that's him, and we're the Sci-Fi Scholars.
And we are talking Doctor Strange.
Not Master Strange or Mr. Strange.
Doctor Strange. There will definitely be spoilers because, that's how we roll.
Yep.
We like spoiling things. No, we don't like spoiling things, but we just can't talk about movies without spoiling them.
We could.
Well, we could.
This is a Marvel movie, and it has Doctor Strange in it.
Done. No?
No.
We're not done. Obviously, we're talking about Doctor Strange.
Yeah. I personally really enjoy Benedict Cumberbatch as an actor. I don't think I've seen anything of him that I haven't liked. So him reprising another role in a movie, I thought was great.
There's not necessarily anything I don't like about him. I actually do like him, but I don't. No, that doesn't make sense. But I don't have anything against him as an actor, and I think he's a good actor, but I don't know. For me, it was solidly acted, but it wasn't something that seems to go up against, well, not against anything specific, but like everyone talks about him in such a high regard that for me it was like a solid performance, but not in the...
So basically, so it's a solid performance for an actor, but not to the level everyone talks about Benedict Cumberbatch. So basically,
Yes,
people talk him up too much, so that when you see him, you don't get what you were expecting.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to put it. That's kind of what I'm getting at. That's not to say he did a bad job, because
I thought it was great. I thought it was quite funny with the whole thing with him knowing all the songs, and
Benedict Wong though,
he was the best. Like, he was hilarious.
I loved him.
Yeah, he's really, really funny, and obviously his character is Wong.
Yeah, that's what I love about it too.
It's great when that just happened, but
yeah,
he was a very solid character. The one thing I didn't get with him is he was the leader of the library, but he was also the head of the Hong Kong thing.
I don't think he was the head of the Hong Kong one.
Well,
they didn't really...
They didn't explain it, but he was leading the resistance there, and it should have been the master of the local place.
I agree with that, but I don't reckon he was necessarily the leader or the master of the Hong Kong one. He went as backup, even though he kind of seemed to be the only one. He went
as backup, but then took over. So
yeah,
they should have either explained that a bit better, or played it out a little bit differently, or had someone else who was the master defer to him in
maybe
it could have been like a 2 or 3 second bit of dialogue that would have made the consistency suit a bit better.
I agree with that, but it's also one of those things that in a movie of this size that you just can kind of gloss over and not have to worry about it too much.
Except that there's tons of nerds watching it who will nitpick the crap out of it.
True.
So no, you can't.
Yeah, that was my least. I didn't care so much about that point.
I did.
See, I didn't know what to expect, and I wasn't really looking forward to this movie all that much. So my expectations were not really high at all.
DC fanboy.
I am. I'm not afraid to admit that. But I love Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Oh, that movie is brilliant. But it's not necessarily that it was a Marvel movie for me. It was the story that it's going into. I'm not huge into magic and mystic art, sort of that goes into more the fantasy realm.
True.
That's not my thing per se.
Yeah.
But it still was a fairly solid movie that was well made, mostly. There was parts that I was frustrated with. I didn't like some of the framing in the direction where he framed the actors on the screen. I just felt like he wasn't using the full width of the widescreen. And then other moments when you had fight scenes where they were doing hand-to-hand sort of combat, which also frustrated me, particularly with Doctor Strange against Khaleesi the first time.
Yep.
He seemed to hold his own way too easily. There was just moments where they were like, oh, we need to be like Bourne, but didn't know how to be like Bourne, and so instead just put the camera as close as possible and shook it. And I was just I actually physically cannot see what's going on right now.
Doctor Strange did have the advantage of an Infinity Stone.
Not in those moments that he was fighting him, though. He just had it around his neck.
So?
But for me, it just did, it just felt oh, he's the main character, but we need a fight scene because it's a Marvel movie. It's meant to be an action movie. We need to do something to excite the audience again because I was getting bored. I'll be honest. And then to me, the logic of this fight scene didn't make that much sense. Like there were some clever moments, but it fell into the typical trope of bad guys, which every movie seems to do. Of I'm going to walk at you slowly and hope you die from me looking at you. That's kind of what it felt like to me.
A bit of the over arrogance thing.
Yeah.
But the other thing, the other great supporting actor was the Cape of Levitation. That was quite like, yes, it was silly, and I thought that scene went a little bit too long, but I thought it was kind of funny. Like he was.
I didn't.
I thought it was funny. If it had been a little bit shorter, it would have been better.
I probably wouldn't have disliked it as much. I didn't hate it, and interestingly enough, the cape in the comics actually isn't sentient. It only helps it fly.
No.
So they made that specifically for the movie, from what I've read. Don't hate me, fanboys, if I got that wrong.
But yeah, I thought that was funny. I also think it was kind of silly that, it seemed to go for that long.
Yeah.
And also the other thing was...
I probably would have found that a lot more enjoyable if it wasn't as long.
Yeah, and then the him being able to use the Infinity Stone so quickly. I understand that the Infinity Stones are different to what they said about the relics in the movie. How relics have to choose you, and in general, Infinity Stones have been picked up by tons of different characters throughout the Marvel movies and just used. But at the same time, the housing that it was in and how they referenced it back to the original Sorcerer Supreme suggested it was basically a relic as well.
Yeah,
so
I agree with that.
It suggests that the relic chose him, but they weren't that surprised that he was able to just use it after reading. So that felt inconsistent for me as well.
There was the inconsistency for me was with his hands. Like one moment he'd be like this, and then the next moment he's kind of using his hands without any trouble.
Yeah, in general, he was using his hands while he was doing magic stuff and not thinking about it. Which could be explained as when he's using magic, he doesn't have the psychological block.
It wasn't that big a deal for me. It was just like, it feels inconsistent, but I can wipe that away and not think about it. That was fine with me.
And then the world-bending, it's called epilepsy-inducing. Like, those scenes were cool, but I think they went a little bit too far with them.
Too long.
Yeah. So, yes, it looks visually fantastic. Yes, it provided some really clever things like tipping people over, and especially when the Ancient One first did it, one versus a lot, defeating them. That makes sense. And then obviously Doctor Strange throwing them out the window and turning thing. That was clever.
That was the part of the fight that I thought that was very well and cleverly done.
He outwitted a couple of the minions and stuff, which great because he's meant to be very clever. He's meant to be very quick thinking, very sure of his hands, and obviously before he has the accident. But I think at the time, like you said, he shouldn't have been so advanced so early. Yeah.
The other thing for me was, and I hate to say this because I really like this guy, Michael Giacchino's score was just too one way than the other, and then just crap. It's simple, or not necessarily crap, but he phoned it in. There was these epically cool moments of real sparseness in music where they just did single notes with lots of reverb on the piano. That just, the idea being, got into the head of Stephen Strange a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't actually like Stephen Strange as a character, personally. I can go back to that later, or I won't, either way. But the music then would just go to cookie cutter fanfare. We're in a fight scene. And then about halfway through the movie, all of a sudden it sounded like Star Trek.
I didn't pick up on that, but music's not my thing. Yeah.
3 or 4 notes, just in a row that you just went, he just copied and pasted that from Star Trek. And it got worse as the movie went on.
You did 5 notes in a row instead of 4.
Yeah, pretty much. But either way, it was just frustrating because I was like, I really like this guy as a composer, but rather than try and do something new, which he kind of did in places, he kind of just phoned it in other places, I felt. which to me was distracting because that's one of the things I listen for and listen to. Not intentionally, it's just one of those things that my brain does, being a musician. That made a little bit disappointing for me in that regards.
And also the whole trope of, oh, we'll leave him on a freezing mountain, he'll learn really fast.
Yeah.
That was a little bit silly.
And quite often, I didn't understand why they opened portals
So far
far away from where they wanted to be.
I have a feeling it's because what they call sling rings aren't quite that controlled. Like, they're not, like, his skill level was fluctuating a lot. So, like,
It wasn't him that I was just referring to, it's all of them.
Yeah, but the ancient one never really did them too far away from herself when she wanted to go through them.
No, but Khaleesi's did.
Yeah, but he was a bit stupid.
I was like, why the heck are you walking down
He was as arrogant as Strange was.
Yes.
So...
But he freaking busted right in the middle of the room for the New York one.
Yeah.
But when the Hong Kong one, when we're coming into the final battle, what does he do? A kilometre down the road, I'll open it up there and I'll just slowly walk down so that they can see me coming from a mile away.
Unless he hadn't been to the outside of the Hong Kong one for some reason, wanted to go to the outside or whatever, so he couldn't picture, because they said you had to be able to picture perfectly where you were going.
Yeah.
If he only knew a scene, but yeah, it was a bit silly.
That's a way to explain it away, but it was still a lot of the time I was like, yeah. But yeah,
made for a cool shots when they were on time outside.
That's about my next point.
The apple was cool as well.
Yeah, little too long.
The
first time and then the second time, and then they get going. I was like, okay, come on, do something else now. And then they finally went to the page.
They went, well, not quite, but like basically.
Yeah. That to me was one of the finer points and probably one of the better scenes in probably almost any movie recently.
It would have been even funnier if he's doing that with one scene and then there's another one thing behind it, just like manipulating himself, manipulating time.
I really like time travel and stuff like that. I really enjoy that sort of storytelling, and the way they implemented it in this movie, in the third act, I thought was brilliantly done, and visually, brilliantly well done. All of them bringing back, and then he was brought Baron, whatever his last name is, into...
Mordo.
Yeah. It brought him into where he was at going forward, and then the fight scene was kind of cool in places and kind of just your stock standard fight scene in other places, but that was not a bad thing. That can sometimes be a good thing. But and then him making the decision to go see Dormammu and get in that endless time loop, I thought was a really good piece of storytelling and executed very well.
Yeah.
Particularly on the streets of Hong Kong, more so than in the
darkness realm,
the other realm.
Yeah.
That one didn't quite look as good, but still looked good, and it was,
getting him killed so many different ways.
Yeah, I thought that was a very, very clever way of ending it. So the first two acts I was a bit watching a movie, and then got into third act and I was quite impressed.
Yep.
So it kind of rectified itself a lot for me in that scene.
And then it went back to the typical Marvel trope of we're setting up for the next movie.
Yeah, which you knew was coming, and I didn't hate it in this one. I actually haven't hated any of them, but I liked this one. It kind of it made sense. It was actually cleverly done.
Yep.
The one thing I hope it's not is like they did for the teaser of Civil War and just used a random scene in the actual movie.
That would be disappointing.
Because that's what they did at the end of Age of Ultron.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
For the start of that was just disappointing.
But
it doesn't seem like it is.
No.
And I thought it was clever, like and they're obviously liking Chris Hemsworth's comedic chops.
Yes.
So they're actually starting to buy in, and because he wasn't he was funny in places in Thor and Thor: The Dark World and in Avengers and stuff, but they seem to be like, okay, let's really roll with that because people are loving that, and I don't mind that, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes in Thor: Ragnarok.
Yep.
It's sniper. I don't know what else. Oh, I'll go back to that strange thing that I felt.
As in the character of Steven.
Yeah, I don't know. I know they were deliberately trying to make him arrogant and probably not that likable, and then he was meant to redeem himself. But for me, that made him so unlikable that he didn't redeem himself at all. For me,
Okay.
he still seems like an arrogant prick at the end, which might be the character.
He probably is still a bit arrogant.
And depending on how they do him in future movies, might actually be a nice, maybe not a nice. I mean, you've got Tony Stark arrogant, and then there was Doctor Strange arrogant. I'm not a huge fan of Tony Stark, but his arrogant makes sense and kind of comes across kind of in a
But they're both like
non-dickish way.
they're both geniuses, and they're both like top of their field.
Yes.
That'd be an interesting showdown.
Yeah.
Although technically, Strange should absolutely destroy him.
Technically.
But
that's probably part of the reason why I wasn't a huge fan of the first 2 acts. Because in the third act, it became less about his character and more about what he's doing.
Yep.
And then, and not just him. I would like to see a Marvel or DC movie where the stakes are not the end of the world, though.
Well, we did. We've seen Red.
No end of the world.
Not the first one. I don't think it was. Maybe it was.
I don't know. Well, the second one technically wasn't either.
It was just one city.
Yeah.
Unless,
Which was going to lead to the end of the world, basically.
well, they thought so.
Yeah, they thought so.
But
Well,
yeah.
technically, Ant-Man kind of was as well. The
Uh,
stakes were a little bit smaller, but he only stopped something that then would have...
well, Ragnarok won't be.
yeah, but it will be end of a world.
Fine. We saw the terrible, the really old Batman Caped Crusader. That wasn't.
Yeah.
That was them just.
The animated movie.
Yep. All the
Don't watch it.
killing joke. That wasn't really the end of the world. That was just.
No, that's true.
They were just their own lives they're playing with.
Yeah, that's true.
What else? What other ones have there been? Guardians of the Galaxy wasn't for Earth.
No, but it was galaxy ending,
True.
and it was a world ending. Like, I get the stakes need to be higher, but it'd be kind of nice.
So what do you want the stakes to be?
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Well, what about Civil War? That wasn't the world.
That's a good point.
That was the fate of Bucky, which is Captain's whole world. So
Yeah.
we got that problem. What else could we have?
I don't know. I'm just.
Which character from the DC universe? Who would you base a movie that's not end? Like
Well, it should have been Suicide Squad.
Yep.
As much as I did enjoy that movie was the opposite for this one for me. First 2 acts, brilliant. Last act, terrible.
Yep.
This was the opposite. First 2 acts, terrible. Last act, quite brilliant.
Okay. So you think that Suicide Squad should have just been some random small thing?
And the new Batman movie, when it comes out, should be end of the world. End of Gotham, maybe? Or maybe not even
I'll
full
ring.
end
I'll
of-
ring Ben and I'll let him know that your thoughts, so he can update his script because he's still working on it.
He better.
I don't know his number. If you get me his number, I'll call him.
I would call him if you got him in.
And with that, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Doctor Strange and just the universes in general.
Yeah, so comment below. And if there is a superhero movie that we're not thinking of that isn't end of the world, like
Yep.
end of the world stakes, apart from Civil War, unless we're missing something that was end of the world, and now we're rambling. So if you
I wasn't.
I
stopped.
Yes, good point. Anyway, thank you for watching. There's our thoughts on this movie. Yeah.
See you next time.